disconnect the negative terminal on the battery. Use a 10mm wrench and loosen it up. Slide it off and out of the way. Take a 5mm hex socket and take these bolts out of the cover. There's 4 of them, 2 down here and 2 up there. Just grab the cover and slide it off. Take off some of these vacuum lines. Just pay attention to which one goes where. You could mark it if you want to. You can use a pick and just slide this off right here. Just be careful not to break anything. You can slide it out of that retainer right there. Just like that. We'll do the same with this one. Take a 10mm socket and take this bolt out right here. And you just take the solenoid and set it to the side. Take a 12mm socket, take this bolt out. And just lay this to the side as well. Take a 10mm socket, take this bolt out of this bracket right here. And just lay this down here. There's a hose right here that goes to the intake. Take that hose off. You can use some needle nose pliers or some hose clamp pliers. Slide the clamp down. And just disconnect the hose. Disconnect the connector right here. Goes to the throttle body, just push down on the tab, slide it off. Remove this snorkel, use a straight blade screwdriver, loosen up the worm clamp right here. And also right here. Slide this off. And up. If you want to, you can take the air box off as well. This end. And you can either disconnect this hose or just slide this out of the way. I'm going to take the throttle body off just to access more stuff behind the intake. You don't necessarily have to do this. Use a 5mm hex socket. Take these bolts out. There's 4 bolts. You can also use a hex key. Makes it a little bit easier. And just grab underneath because you're going to have a seal gasket. It's a good idea to replace that. Behind here, there's a bracket that goes behind the head. You're going to take the 2 bolts off, use a 12mm ratchet wrench or just a regular wrench. You can loosen them up. It's kind of hard to see. You just kind of have to do it blindly. Once you get them loose, you can do it by hand. And there's 2 of those. The bracket can stay attached to the head. Use a 12mm socket, take these 2 nuts out and the rest of the bolts. Now you can grab the whole plenum, just slide it up. You can slide it forward slightly. We'll just take a couple rags, slide them over the intake ports so nothing drops down in there. Now we can access the back of this a little bit easier. Just take some hose clamp pliers Move that hose clamp down. This is the hose that goes to the brake booster. Just slide that off. There's another hose right here. Take that hose off. And it just slides right off. There's a couple connectors right here. Disconnect those connectors. Just push down on the tab. If you need to, use some pliers to push down on that tab. There's a bracket that these connectors are connected to. You're gonna have to use a 10mm socket. And loosen that up. Or you can try to slide these connectors off the bracket too. And there we go. Try not to lose that bolt. And just slide this out. There is 2 coolant hoses still connected. If you want, you can disconnect those, but then you're gonna have to deal with the coolant system and topping it off and stuff and bleeding the system. So if you want to, you can just set this aside, just like that. Then you don't have to deal with the coolant. Now let's take the intake gasket off. Might stick a little bit and slide it off. Clean this up a little bit with a rag and some brake parts cleaner. Make sure nothing falls down the ports. Now slide the new gasket in position. Make sure the bolt holes line up. Take the intake, make sure you clean the bottom of this with some brake parts cleaner and a rag. And just slide it in position. Before I install it, I want to hook up these hoses. Slide that hose in position and move that clamp. I'm going to take that bracket, line that up. Line this bracket up, get the bolt through the back. Just be careful not to drop it. You could take these connectors off and put the bracket on first. It makes it a little easier for you. And tighten that up. Connect those connectors. And the brake booster hose. Line that up. Move the clamp. Now just make sure this lines up front. Line the studs up. That's good. I'm going to get these bolts started up front. Before I tighten these down though, I want to put the 2 bracket bolts on in the back. Just get those started. Now take the bracket bolts. Make sure nothing's pinched back here. and get those started. And the other one. Now put the nuts on up front. Tighten all these bolts down. Now torque these to 15 foot-pounds in a specific order. So this is number 1 right in the middle. Number 2 over to the left. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5. Now tighten the bolts up on the back that are on the bracket. Just use your ratchet wrench and snug them down. Take your throttle body, I have a new gasket, and line this up. Get one of the bolts to go through the top. Get that bolt started. And take another bolt, go through the other, make sure it goes through the gasket as well. And get that one started. And the bottom one goes through this bracket first. After you tighten those bolts down, then you can plug the connector in, lock it down. Now take this solenoid and the hose that goes right here, slide that back over. If you need to, use your hose clamp pliers to fix that hose clamp. Line this up. Put the bolt back in. Tighten that down. And line this up. Get the hoses in the right position. So this hose is going to go right here. This hose will go over here. Put those back in this bracket right here. Put that bolt in. And this one. Just snug them down. Line the snorkel back up. Slide it over the throttle body. And over the airbox. Tighten down the worm clamp. Snug that down, and snug this one down. Put the cover back on. Put the bolts back in. Get them all lined up. And snug these down. And hook the battery back up, negative cable. Take your 10mm wrench and just snug this down. Just make sure it's tight.